for today's webinar. The format of the webinar will include this short introduction. Each of the panelists joining us today will make brief presentations, and then we will field your questions and answers and provide answers. So I think that it's going to be a really worthwhile and interesting webinar that we have today. Our two panelists today include, as I mentioned, two SPS graduates. The first of those is Monique Hector. Her current title is Manager, the Job and Business Academy at the Queensborough Public Library. And Monique has her MS degree in Business Management and Leadership from SPS in 2012. Our other speaker is James Archer Davis Jr., and he is Associate in Global Management Strategies at the Estee Lauder Companies. James has his BA degree in Sociology, also from 2012 from SPS, and he finished last year in 2015 with his MBA in IO Psychology and Organizational Behavior from the Zicklin School of Business at Baruch. So James comes to us with an SPS degree as well as Baruch College. So I'll spare you any more of my introductory remarks because I think you're all here to really get the perspectives from our panelists today. So with that, I will go ahead and turn the floor over to Monique Hector, who will share a little about her own career narrative and some of the things that she's done up to this point in her career and her education and so forth. So Monique, take it away.
Hi, thank you so much, Shannon. And hi, everyone. Just to give a little background about myself, again, my name is Monique, and I received my bachelor's in business and marketing in 2006. Seems like a long time from now, long ago from now. After receiving that degree, I worked in advertising and marketing after college for about 2 years, but of course, due to economic changes, was laid off in 2009. During this time, it was a struggle, and I was forced to see how challenging the workforce was, and realizing how important at that time obtaining a graduate degree really meant for my long-term goals and my career specifically. So in 2010, I got some information about the CUNY School of Professional Studies and realized that obtaining the master's in business with the online program meant, that this would catapult my career in so many directions. And I realize even to this day that it's one of the best decisions that I've made so far, because joining this program allowed me to work full-time, as well as having the flexibility to learn and study while working. It was definitely a blessing in disguise, being able to, still live and work in New York City, and then being able to obtain this master's degree that would help me in my future career and in the current career that I was in at that moment. Once I enrolled in school, I also found a full-time job working in nonprofit. So that was a different transition from working in marketing to a nonprofit organization. But the reason why I stepped into the workforce development nonprofit side is because, noticing how the economy was changing, how, even with or without a degree, it's difficult for job seekers. I wanted to be a part of that field, to be able to help job seekers that needed, assistance in terms of knowing how to search for employment, what schools they needed to choose, and, what roles they wanted to take in their careers. So I figured workforce development made sense for me. And then also noticing that the advertising field wasn't something that I was passionate about anymore. I think, while being in school with a master's and studying and learning from my peers through the platform that we use with Blackboard, I'm realizing that, this is not something that I really want to do full-time, long-term, so workforce development made sense. And then doing that, I transitioned into working with the city and having now, a total of 5 years of workforce development. It led me to apply for a position with Queens Library, where I am now. So I'm managing the Job and Business Academy program, which essentially helps job seekers with resumes, interviewing, tech skills, learning how to use, Microsoft, even just the basic computer skills to advance, and also helping them start small businesses. What's funny about having jumped into this position is that initially when I had interviewed, they mentioned in the interview that the position required a master's in library science, and that's something that I didn't have. I actually had the master's in business, and they recently changed it to allowing people with masters in business to apply because they weren't finding the right fit for a person with the master's in library science. So I think it was just perfect timing for me to have obtained a degree within the 5 years of me working in workforce development, having the experience coupled with the education allowed me to be able to get a position as a manager and then continue to grow in this field while meeting new people and building on getting new mentors and just networking. So right now that's where I'm at, and I'm continuing to grow in the field that I'm in now. I've been here 1 year, and I look forward to a lot more growth within the company and with my staff and with the customers that we work with.
Thank you, Monique. Sort of a nice little walk down the career path that you took from working within sort of marketing and advertising through making the decision to pursue your degree at SPS and then moving into nonprofit and your current role now. So thank you for sharing. We look forward to hearing more from you when we start answering the questions that have come in. And thank you. We've already gotten a question that's come in. So after we've heard from James, we'll go through and start answering those questions from everyone else. Okay, so with that, I want to go ahead and turn things over to our other panelists today, James Archer Davis Jr. James, take it away.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll start off with saying that I actually have a really large non-traditional career path. Over the last 15 years, I've held many jobs, mainly because I had actually started pursuing musical theater originally. So I've worked anywhere from a funeral home to retail. When I first moved to New York City in 2003, I worked for Pfizer for 3.5 years. I was a computer consultant, box office work, and now I've gotten into the field of strategic HR, which is complicated but very exciting. So my educational background, I actually started college in 1999 as a vocal performance major. And the first trap I ran into, which I didn't realize was a trap, was I took major classes, but not the required standard classes such as English and math and sciences, so that when I did decide to move to New York City in 2003 and wanted to pursue other career aspirations, none of my credits really transferred. So I actually was lucky enough after the first 4 years of college to end with an associate's degree, and that at least gave me a small foundation. I then spent the next almost 10 years trying to finish my degree, taking correspondence classes, and every time I would finish a class, something else would come up, and then they'd change the rules or anything like that. So it became very frustrating. This is all while I was doing musical theater and taking on the computer consulting jobs and the one-off jobs just to get by. When I ended up at CUNY SPS, it was because they actually looked at my transcripts and were able to accept 75 of my credits. I think at that time I had already had 120 credits, and then they allowed me to test out of 15. So I can now say this, now that it's a few years out. The reason I chose sociology was because it only required 10 classes to finish, and it allowed me to finish it in a year, so taking 5 classes each semester. It was also fascinating. I did enjoy it, but that was the main reason I took it. And CUNY SPS actually accepting 90 credits was very beneficial for me to transition careers, because the fall, I started in January of 2012, the fall of 2011, I had actually been laid off from my computer consulting gig. So I had to figure out what to do next and found out that not having a bachelor's degree was a hindrance for me. I couldn't actually get interviewed because I didn't have a BA degree. So while I was taking the classes at STS, I did a lot of, I tried to do a lot of networking and temp agency work and began doing informational interviews. I know that after I graduated in December of 2012, I did work with Shannon to develop or to reach out to others in different industries to schedule informational interviews and try to do all of that. Because I also found after getting the BA degree, it was very challenging to even get interviews because of my non-traditional background. When I could finally speak with somebody and show them that everything I can take it from, especially theater and computer consulting and even Pfizer and all of that, it is transferable. It's just finding out what your story is and illustrating that I can bring certain things to the table. Coursework from SPS especially, stats became hugely important, not just for the role I'm in now, but also for my MBA. And I find that more and more people are beginning to talk about big and small data. The stats classes definitely helped give me a good foundation to look at data in a different way. I also took a modeling class in my MBA, and I would suggest everyone to take an Excel class because the Excel that even HR is doing in my current role, most people wouldn't have thought you would need that going forward. And then also tech classes, anything in digital, in the digital workspace, how digital works. Since I'm in consumer goods and dealing with the consumer, a lot on omni-channel and how things work in the digital media and the consumer experience are very beneficial. So it was very challenging, I would have to say, transitioning careers. I was frustrated quite a bit. And the main reason is it's getting people to understand that just because your background is not linear is important. Because there will be a lot of people. I remember one HR professional turned to me and said in an interview, it must have been nice to pursue a hobby for 10 years. So it sort of shows how can you frame your story to best get your points across, put you in the best light, and show what those transferable skills are, whether it's leadership or customer experiences and customer service and stakeholder management and things that are tangible that many people in different careers are looking for and are hard to sort of get without the experiences you've already had. So I think that is a good summary.
Thank you, James. Could you just describe real briefly what you're doing currently in your position? I'm not sure if some of our attendees would know exactly what strategic human resources entails, and I think that might be helpful for the questions and answers that we go over as well.
Perfect. So my department falls under HR, yet we are tied to the strategy of the company. So the best way to say it is if there's a need in the company, they come to our department, and I have one part of my department builds out learning opportunities for different areas of the business. One of those right now is digital marketing. Another one is we help the company as a whole upskill the current population because especially with digital and the way technology is changing, that has become important. And we're a legacy company, so we've got tons of people who have been here for 10, 15, 20, 25 or more years, and they weren't around when, or they didn't learn in school all the digital aspects of our business. So we want to retain them and not let them go. So how can we upskill those people? I also work on a program, the presidential programs, and help recruit for those. And those are rotational programs for MBAs and BA graduates, recent graduates, that we place them in rotations based on business need and strategy at that time. So it's constantly changing every 6 months. If the market changes or we find that the volatility has changed, for instance, with Hong Kong and every other region, Brazil, I know that there were other issues, then we look every 6 months at our rotational program and find out where the next rotation for those students or for those employees is going to be.
Thank you, James. Just a quick reminder to attendees, send in your questions. We've gotten a couple of those. I wanted to step back over to Monique, and I don't think that we learned too much specifically about what you're doing currently in your role that you have at the Queens Library. So maybe could you just share that with us, and then I'll go into the questions.
Great. So more so on the side of working with the Job and Business Academy, it's kind of sort of exactly what it says. So we work with customers who come into the library who are looking for assistance when it comes to job searching or just getting back into the field, when it comes to developing a resume or a cover letter or understanding how to do interviews, or even, just like James mentioned, asking for informational interviews. We have a ton of customers that are young and old, and we notice it's interesting because we notice a lot of older customers that are actually looking to get back into the workforce, and I think that's something that's kind of untapped right now with the market that we're in, where a lot of employers are going towards the younger generation, but we're trying to assist them to make sure that their skills are adequate, that they're up to date on things that are going on. So that comes into play with our tech side. So we have the technology side where we're helping them develop skills in learning how to use Excel from beginner to advanced, as well as learning how to develop PowerPoint presentations, and also to even be able to present a presentation and building confidence in themselves when they do get out there in the workforce. And then we have in our program the entrepreneurship side. So it's developing a person who has a small idea for just starting a new business. We're helping them along the way to understand what entrepreneurship means, what it is that they'll have to know to keep going, and then to just push them forward. So I have a team of about 5 staff members, part-time and full-time, and they all work together closely to make sure that we're building out on the right programming. So we're having the right workshops that people need, making sure that we take surveys to understand what customers are noticing our trends, and then trying to develop something around that. We also, in my role as a manager, I also work closely with developing proposals for new grants. We're currently working on a grant right now to work with low-income students as well. So it's a range of different things that it provides, and I think that's one of the things I love about my position, is that it has so much flexibility. I'm always learning, I'm always creating something new, and we're really responding to the market and the needs of the customers.
Thank you, Monique. It sounds like you wear many hats in the role that you have, as does James. So we've gotten a couple of questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and start going through those questions. Just again, to attendees, feel free to send them in as we're going over the ones that are coming in. We'll do our best to address everything. If we get a lot of questions that are sort of unrelated to today's topic, or they're very specific in nature, I may not, bring those questions up for the group, but I hope that those of you who ask those questions keep in mind that you can certainly reach out to me in advance, after the webinar, to go over some of those specific questions, and I can certainly address them with you. Okay, so the first one that we've gotten in, I'll go ahead and just ask Monique quickly, although I think I know the answer. Monique, did you work full-time while studying for your master's degree online?
Yes, I did. I worked full-time. Worked full-time, 9 to 5. I actually live in Brooklyn and worked in Queens. And then, you know, that's why I mentioned earlier, having that flexibility to be able to work, do my schoolwork from home and even from work was a big plus in helping me keep persistent with this. 'Cause I know, you know, doing that, going to school in a physical classroom and then working full-time 9 to 5 would have been a real challenge for me. But this really kept me accountable for the things that I need to do. I'm very good with keeping organized with things just in calendars and tracking different things, different apps to use to be able to track what's going on, whether with work, life, or school. So it was a big plus to be able to do that online. So yes, work full-time.
Okay. Thank you. It sounds
Hmm.
like no matter what's happening for you, you're always busy.
Yes.
So we have some questions coming in, just sort of our attendees are really looking for some pointers from the two of you on how to make their own career transitions. So I'll jump over to James, and I think that this points to something that he mentioned. He used the phrase framing a story in terms of networking and informational interviewing and regular interviewing. James, can you expand and explain a little bit? Is that sort of like constructing your personal or elevator pitch?
I would say yes, and I would say the elevator pitch is the sort of jumping off point. Ironically, I have been reviewing quite a few resumes recently, and this may help, and I'll try to delve deeper as well. So one of the things, because we are Estee Lauder companies, many of the applicants always speak about growing up as a child and seeing their mother or their grandmother put on a certain fragrance or a certain lipstick and not being able to touch it or do anything with it. It was sort of there in the background, but they always wanted to aspire to that. It's a great story, but everybody has that story. How do you take it to the next level? So how can you say, okay, so that's how I saw it, and so that gave me the passion to sort of develop these 5 skills, and sort of how does that translate into the new working environment? So for theater, for example, one of the big things that I've heard about now is presentation skills. So one of the ways to take a story is to go, okay, so I did do theater for 10 years, and it's something I still am very passionate about. And these are the things it taught me. It taught me how to get up in front of a crowd and speak. It taught me how to prepare something so that I'm prepared to actually get in front of the crowd. It taught me to interact with people on even a one-on-one basis. And that can translate in the working environment by doing stakeholder management with different functions or regions or different areas of the business, plus helping deal with the customers if you're customer facing or things like that. It's sort of like narrowing down, okay, these are the skills I actually have. These are the skills that the job requires, and normally those are in the job descriptions. How does that translate? And make sure you have a couple good examples of how you did stakeholder management, how you led a team or facilitated a group, or whatever the other requirement is in those job requirements, because then it also shows that you're prepared, and make them simple as opposed to going into tons and tons of detail, I would say. I hope that helps.
Thank you, James. I think a lot of what you said resonates with me in terms of providing advice to students, whether they're trying to make a career change or they're, sort of in any interview setting where you're really trying to target specifically the needs of the organization, even if you may have many other skill sets, that you need to focus more on what's going to be most relevant for that employer in that role. So, I really appreciate what you said also about trying to sort of stay on topic with
Right.
your pitch within an interview. I've gotten 2 similar questions sort of related to that. Maybe I'll turn this over to Monique first, and then we'll come back to James to get his perspective as well. Someone mentions that they're still a couple of years away from receiving their degree, and they're trying to make a career transition, but they're finding it difficult to really get an interview for the jobs they're looking for. So they wanted to know if there are recommended steps you could take beyond informational interviewing that might help get their foot in the door, at least for that interview. Monique, do you have any advice for this person?
Sure, I do actually. It's funny. That's a good question because I think this is something that I struggled with in terms of moving towards getting a position that was in more of a managerial role, and obviously that pays well. You want to find something that fits the skills that you have and the qualifications that you have, and try to translate it. But it doesn't always show when you just send in a resume or ask for an informational interview and meet someone. So aside from just first, one thing you can do obviously is networking. It's making sure that you're, at the right table with the right folks. And again, just like James mentioned, having that speech, having something to speak to your experience, something that kind of grabs the person's attention, but also that matches the skills that you have. So you're using transferable skills that you have in your all your years of experience and being able to explain that to them so that they are, intrigued by what you're saying and have, even the slightest intention to try to meet with you again. Two, one thing that I did that's really unconventional is utilize LinkedIn. So in terms of using LinkedIn, I would essentially look up information about different positions or companies that I was interested in outside of LinkedIn. And then when I went to LinkedIn, I would try to find people that were in those roles, people that were managers for the departments that I was looking to jump into. And then I messaged them through LinkedIn, giving them not necessarily a brief, not necessarily a cover letter type introduction, but more of a honest, very direct reason why I'm interested in the position and the company. It's saying, this is me, this is the experience that I have, this is why I want this job, this is why, it makes sense for me to be in this position. So I'm asking you to at least meet with me or review my resume or reach out to me with any questions that you might have. And if I couldn't find ways to connect to people through LinkedIn, just through the message function, I'd literally look up the person's first and last name, find out how the company sets up their email addresses, and then actually find that email address and send them an email from my direct email. So it's saying if someone's setup is with the city, it's, first initial last name at XYZ, I would literally just say, let me try this email address. If this doesn't work, I'll try it a different way. And then send them an email with my resume and my letter of intent, so to speak, not necessarily a cover letter, but saying, this is why I'm passionate about this. This is why I'm interested. And it really is a different way to approach an employer. And not even just the employer. It doesn't have to go to HR, but it can be someone that would be your colleague or someone that had that position in the past or someone that works in that department. And then even amongst that, just touching base with people that you know in your circle, say, do you know someone from this department? Can you give me a contact with someone just so I can, talk their ear off and find some information about the role, and then things that will essentially come up down the line, because maybe the position's not posted now, but it will be posted soon. So that's a different option. It would be networking, one, and two is unconventional, just Googling people and then emailing them.
Thank you for sharing your secret, Monique. It sounds like you had to, really sort of be creative and use some investigative
Absolutely.
techniques in order to reach out to the right people. But, I think something that comes, sort of rings true with that is, again, you tried to focus your efforts and make sure that you were marketing your transferable skills correctly to the right kinds of people. James, do you have anything to add to what Monique shared in terms of, beyond informational interviewing? Is there something else a person can do if they're having difficulty sort of getting that interview?
Sort of. I would say networking is definitely key. The only way I was able to actually get into my current role and the role before it was I actually networked and somebody referred me to a temp agency who got me into Estee Lauder companies. So don't discount temp agencies. Just knowing that that's also a way to sort of get into a role or an area you want to get into. I would also say if you find a role that is what you definitely want and you don't necessarily have the skills needed, or you're still working on finishing your degree or getting some certain skills, use a temp agency or a lateral type job outside of that industry or company to gain those skills. So for instance, getting a temp agency to get you into the company, maybe not where you want to be, but somewhere else. And then that sort of allows you to network internally as opposed to trying to go out it from outside. I would say don't discount the temp agencies.
Really, really good point there. I think particularly with the typical population of students and graduates from SBS is that many of our folks are beyond sort of the stage of internship, and if not, they're just not able to pursue an internship as an option because many times internships are unpaid. But I think that using a staffing agency and getting work experience in a paid position that might be temporary in another area is a great alternative to interning because, as you said, James, it's a good way to sort of build certain skills that you may be lacking and at the same time network internally within organizations. So I think great advice from both of you. We got another question that I think points a little bit to what Monique was saying is, how do you do things like reach out to individuals on social media, emailing professionals in different organizations that you find online? How do you do this and make sure that you're being effective and, you know, sort of reaching out to the right companies that align with goals, but you do so without being too pushy? Monique, do you have something maybe to sort of add to how to go about those tactics but not be too aggressive and pushy?
Sure, because that's a good question because it definitely can seem pushy and abrasive and just like you're trying to jump in. But I think the way you need to approach it is, you know, in a humble way. It's hard to really define how that would be for an individual, but it has to be very humble in terms of why you want to join that company, what you love about the company. I think that would be a good push because, you know, everyone loves to hear positive things about themselves or the place that they work. So if you're starting off with, you know, this is the things that I love about this organization, and, you know, these are the things that I admire, this is why I have an interest in it, then it seems a little bit softer to say, okay, now I understand why they're so interested, and now I understand why, you know, they're interested in this department or in this type of role, because it doesn't necessarily have to say, I want the HR department, and that's the department that I want. You can say that you're interested in, you know, just kind of lay out what your goals are and what your plans are for your future, and then have them almost decide what department makes sense for you. And even if it's the same department you want or not, it's a way for you to get into the company and then be able to work your way from there. So I think that's one of the easiest things to say. It's not necessarily saying you want ABC department and ABC position. It's saying you want a position where you can be able to use these skills and, you know, continue to grow in skills and learn and provide X, Y, Z, so that they can say, okay, you know what, I want to meet with you, and then try to go from there.
Great point. I think something to keep in mind, and this is advice that I've given to job seekers that I'm helping, is to, you know, approach someone, and people enjoy being able to talk about themselves and their careers. They generally want to give advice, but they, you know, it can be difficult if they're approached in a way that seems like, if you say, I'm looking for a job, I'm really interested in this job that's open at your organization, and if it's not the right fit at the time, or there's not an opportunity that that person knows of at the time, they find it difficult to be helpful. So if you can sort of approach it in a non-threatening way, but almost with a little bit of flattery and asking for advice, that it tends to be perceived as less pushy and more that you truly are interested in their career and learning some things for yourself. James, what do you think about, you know, approaching different professionals and networking with, you know, doing the right effective things but not being too pushy?
I would say be respectful of everybody's time, and so be almost to the point and only sort of answer what is asked. So currently I'm reviewing about 400 resumes, and I've received resumes that don't have a cover letter. I've received extra projects or references or things like that. Be aware, one, of the other person's time. So it's easy in a job description. They'll normally ask for a resume and a cover letter. If they don't ask for references, don't give the references yet. If they don't ask for a transcript, don't give a transcript. In networking, that's especially true because most people, I know when people want to talk with me, I only have maybe a half an hour in a day to schedule for outside work. So go at it. I know that you may be busy and it may take a little while, but I was wondering if I could maybe meet with you for coffee. It's my treat, sort of offer them an incentive to speak with you. I know when I did networking and the informational interviews, I would actually offer to pay for coffee. I would come to them as opposed to them having to go somewhere else in the city. Just be respectful of their time. I think that goes a long way for good stakeholder management.
Sure. I think great pointers there. And, I liked that you added your perspective as a person who's currently reviewing resumes, for career opportunities, that it's important to really follow instructions and make sure
Right.
that, you're being, again, mindful of the person's time.
Right.
We've mentioned a couple times, and this is something that I think I talk about a lot with people looking to make career change, transferable skills. So, I'll let James answer this one, and then I'll turn to Monique. How did you figure out your transferable skills? Who did you ask for help from? Friends, colleagues? How did you figure out your best transferable skills to then market for your career transition?
I tried doing the friends and the family. With my non-traditional background, it was a little more difficult. So what then someone actually said was go out and look on like Indeed or other job posting boards and find the types of jobs that you want, and actually look at the jobs that you want further down the road too as well, and sort of look and see what they're asking for. Are there overarching themes per se? So one, I know that leadership comes up a lot, how you work, whether it's on a team or depending on the role. Is it a more team-based job or is it a more individual-based position? Is it creative? Is it more analytical? And then sort of going, okay, so leadership, analytics, and working on a team are the sort of main areas of this job description. Where in my past, and try to do more recent, where in my past have I shown this type of leadership? Where in my past have I done these analytics or certain types of analytics? And how were they helpful? And then where did I show working in a team, and how did that work, and things like that. So I would say look for the overarching themes, and then even if it's just brainstorming on a piece of paper for each theme, when did I show leadership in the past 10 years or however many jobs? When did I show dealing with analytics? When did I show working on teams? And always take it a step further and go, how did that affect the team or my work positively? I think everybody wants to see a result. I can always say I'm a great leader. I'm a team player. I can always do that. The next step is that other person asking without asking. So, okay, you say you're a great team player, but I didn't see or hear anything that shows or illustrates that you are actually a great team player. So take it that step further.
Thank you, James. I think that's a really good point. That's true even when you're putting together a resume, particularly if you're trying to make a career change and you're really trying to tailor your resume to focus on those transferable skills. Even if something you did previously that was related to leadership, for example. If it was in a different industry or setting, it's okay as long as you're able to show what the true impact was of that and the results of that. So I think that's important to keep in mind for resumes and anything having to do with job search. Monique, what are your thoughts on being able to sort of identify transferable skills within yourself and then market those appropriately for your career change?
I think it's on top of what James said. It's really, I think, starting backwards, it's being a part of things that you normally wouldn't be a part of. So in your position now, you have to think of looking outside of the box to be able to even obtain those transferable skills. So even working, when I worked with NYC Business Solutions as an account manager in recruitment, I took on so many different roles outside of recruitment to be able to learn, even for myself what I can handle, and then even if it's something that I've never done before, to learn from others as well. So it's using those transferable skills that I had in being able to communicate well with people, but saying, okay, well, what about doing that in presenting at meetings, so that I can use that as a skill that, when I look up positions that I want down the line, that's something that they ask for. So to be able to speak to it, I have to have at least done a little bit of it. Being able to work under, because all of this is kind of with transferable skills, I usually tend to work backwards when it comes to that, because a lot of times people don't necessarily document what they do. We have jobs we work in, and when we write our resume and we speak to it, we tend to focus on the regular duties that the position just posted. But there's so many things that we do within our jobs that, on a Tuesday, a random Tuesday, someone asks us to go above and beyond and do something that we normally haven't done. We have to make sure that we're documenting those things, because it's part of your being able to do your own job, transferring those skills and be able to do a new job. So having, if you can, keeping a running, even a Word document and saying, okay, this is something new that I did, and documenting that and keeping that with you, transferable skill. Or again, being able to jump into different roles and play a different role in your department, so that you can learn from others and be able to learn in your own as well. One thing for me, even just, in all honesty, it was working on projects that the manager was supposed to work on. So it's even learning from things that you normally don't want to do, or positions you're put in where you have to do others' work. It's something that you gain from it at the end of the day, so you can't look at it as though, I'm not going to do it because it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's more of, this is going to mean something to me 2, 3, 4 years from now, where I'll be in that position and, actually gaining from it, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, and I think you made a good point there about, sometimes we don't even realize when we're developing different professional competencies, and I think that, those are the kinds of things, shameless plug, I urge those of you, thinking about transferable skills and with interests in making career transitions, talk to us in career services, because we can help you go through these kinds of things and sort of figure out what some of your own skill sets are that you might be able to market for your eventual career. Stepping in sort of a new direction now, we talked a little bit about internships, which may not be possible for someone who's, a more experienced professional, or for someone who needs to be working for pay. We also talked about, as James had mentioned, doing temporary work was successful for him. What do either of you think about doing like volunteer or pro bono types of work to sort of build skill sets and so forth? Do you think that that would be a useful strategy for someone to use? James?
I think it would possibly be done well. I remember speaking earlier this year with someone who was trying to get into accounting. I think he was auditing, but he wanted to do more of the tax area. And I let him know that going out and finding someone, even if it's volunteering to do taxes during tax time somewhere in that industry, will get you the networking and the ability. And those people who work around with you, normally there are other people that volunteer, that work in the industry you want to be in, that can then see you actually doing certain things that you may not get the opportunity to do in your current position, or not even in your current position. So I would say volunteering is good, try to be more strategic about the volunteering. Don't just, I want to volunteer at the animal shelter if you don't want to go there, unless that's something you're passionate about as well. But make it more strategic. Where would maybe some of these types of people in the industry I want to get into volunteer at, or do they actually have philanthropic areas that they volunteer at, and start networking that way. I would say it's a good networking area.
I agree completely. It's sort of, if you can do something on a volunteer basis that's definitely relevant to what your career goals are, it's sort of a good way to network without really networking. It might also take a little bit of that sort of nervousness away that many people have when they're doing networking. Monique, what do you think about volunteering and those kinds of things to sort of contribute to your career transition?
I think it's great. I think it's a great plus to be able to say that you've done extra without having gotten paid for it. Volunteering in areas of, one, your expertise, and also things that you want to learn, and also asking people for assistance. I even have a staff member that is part-time and is working, is part-time and going to school and also works another job part-time, and he wants to do computer tech stuff. And he's in the industry where he's able to do so, but the department he's working in, he's not, learning much from, but he wants to do work in another department. My, advice to him is to try to talk with someone that's already within the company in the department you want to go into, and then pick their brain, ask them questions, see if you can find time to meet with them, during maybe 10 minutes before lunch or after lunch when they're winding down, or early in the morning, just to see, what's going on with work, and then to see where you can lend support. Because at the end of the day, you still want to learn something from it, and to at least say you've participated in, that role where it's something you want to do in the future. So whether it is within your own company or outside of the company, I think volunteering is a big portion. It might not be feasible depending on the industry that you're in, but if it's not volunteering, it's going to networking events, it's meeting people online, in person, and trying to just, have time to talk to them. It's, buying that cup of coffee and asking questions, because you never know who has connections for where you need to be.
Thank you, Monique. I think all good ideas, particularly thinking about something that you can do in a relatively short amount of time, even within your own organization, can really make a difference. Feel free to send questions in. It looks like we've got like maybe another 6 minutes until our webinar is scheduled to end. Here's a quick one that I'll go ahead and put out there, which I'm just kind of interested to know as well. Monique, I'll go to you first. Who, if any, are mentors that you've had within your career growth?
Well, for now, in my career, honestly, one mentor I've recently received through my organization, and it really was just, it happened randomly. It's just a matter of communicating. It's talking, it's connecting on different levels, and then being able to talk to the person a little bit more about their experience and their work history and their background, and seeing what they're interested in doing, and then being able to say, okay, you know what, this is something, even if it's not my exact field, because she's in a totally different field than me. I can learn so much about how she's gotten to where she is, and the struggles she's had, the challenges, the successes, and how she's handled it. I think makes her, an ideal mentor. So when it comes to having a mentor, it's not that easy to find. And it doesn't have to be someone you speak to every day, but it's just that person that you can go to when you need advice, even if it's not the same industry. So it can be someone that's in IT and you're in HR. It can, it doesn't matter what department. It's really just a matter of someone who can talk to their experience and be able to provide you with real sound advice, and finding someone that's very honest with you as well. People tend to find mentors that might coddle them, or someone they just look up to, and they can just say, I love that person and they do a great job, but, they're not giving them sound advice and honest advice and being real with them, because, today's market is very honest. People are specific about what they look for in employees, so you want to understand if people can give you, yeses and nos. So I think that's just one thing. But I have one mentor, so whether she knows it or not.
I think it's something that not a lot of people sort of think about, whether it's sort of a formal mentorship or even something informal.
Mm-hmm.
James, is there anybody that you might consider a mentor that you've had that's been useful to you, or any advice on this subject?
I've had a few over the course of my career. I would say after SPS, I did work with the head of the department, of the sociology department, and another teacher, and I would meet them maybe once a week or once every month or so, just to go over resumes and talking through things and different areas of what opportunities could be out there, just to get a different perspective. Recently, this is the second role I've had at Estee Lauder. So in the first role, I had a manager who is no longer with the company. And we meet up maybe once or twice a year, and I'm able to talk and say, okay, so here's what's going on. How do I deal with this? What should I do? Something, it's sort of like a soundboard to get advice without it being a manager or somebody that could affect your current role. So I would say as long as the mentor is outside of your scope, your current scope, would be beneficial. And also it should be organic. I did speak a lot and ask people, should I go to somebody and say, will you be my mentor? It's a little daunting. So most of the best mentors, I think, grow organically out of another relationship, work or otherwise.
I agree.
I think both of you make really good points there, and something that I think, as James said, it's something that should sort of happen organically and informally. And I think part of finding that type of sounding board and mentor is not being afraid to talk to people and ask questions and ask for help and advice, because you'll find that the person may also learn a good bit from you. I just always think it's an interesting question to ask, to find out from people, so who has mentored them along the way in their career. I think that pretty much tops out with the questions we've gotten for today. I did just want to close today's webinar and remind our attendees that, as you may have seen on the screen, I'm going to be sending out an online, it's a real quick survey just to get some feedback on what you thought of today's webinar. We hope that it was worthwhile for you. If you are interested in following up with James or Monique or both, send an email to us at Career Services and we'll be able to share information with you on doing so. I know that, the other thing is we do have our third and final webinar coming up on Tuesday, April 5th at 12:30 once more. And this one is going to be focused on networking, which is something we've talked a lot about today. It's titled Make the Most of Connections, Networking Strategies, and Leveraging Career Fairs. So I hope that some of you will be able to join us for that third and final webinar of the semester. And lastly, in closing, I just wanted to say thank you to Monique Hector and James Archer-Davis. I really enjoyed hearing your career narratives and sort of getting a little peek into how you were able to successfully make a career transition. It sounds like that both of you did a lot of sort of networking related activities, but you also had some different strategies that were effective for you in making the switch. So I really appreciate your time and your willingness to share advice with all of our attendees today. And hopefully this webinar was worthwhile for everyone who was able to join us. James or Monique, anything final to say?
No, just thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both very much.
Everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.